Hello, this is Rick Geiger. In this video clip, I'll try to show the visual clues or the attitude out the front windscreen that I use when instructing landing a maule. Here's an outside view of a normal approach. I use the same approach for wheel landings or three-point right down to the flare. Here's a view on my MX-7 160 turning about a half-mile final. Stabilized airspeed of about 60 miles an hour indicated. 2 notches of flaps. Now the important thing is to look at the relationship of the end of the runway, where I want to flare, to the cowling of the aircraft. I like to try to keep that same relationship of the runway and in the windscreen. If the runway starts climbing higher in the windscreen, it means I'm below the glide slope that I've established. Now the important thing, and of course, if it goes below the cowling where I can't see it, the end of the runway, I am high on the glide slope to the cowling of the aircraft. If the standard approach is 3 degrees on the VASI, I like to maintain at least about 4.5 degree slope. So it's a fairly steep approach, but I control it by looking out the windscreen. Pitch for airspeed and power for altitude control, keeping that same relationship in the windscreen. Well, let's continue the approach on down to the roundout. Now you may notice that I have a slight right-hand crosswind, but I'm keeping that relationship of the runway above the cowling all the same. And I will take this right on down to the roundout right at the end of the runway. From this point on, I never look at the airspeed indicator. I'm looking for the visual cue so I'm able to react on anything that happens close here to the ground. Now here's an example of an approach too high. I've got power off, full flaps, and I'm still going to go past my intended spot of rotation at the end of the runway. Coming in too low. The end of the runway is high in the windscreen and creeping higher. I'm adding power here, trying to stretch the glide out. Now if you have a downdraft or some other problem, you'll end up landing short. Okay, let's look at a normal 3-point landing. On glide slope, full flaps, reducing the power. When I get to the end of the runway, I will ease the nose up, put it on the horizon, and let the airplane settle. Now here's that same landing from the outside. Okay, now let's look at a wheel landing. Same approach, same flare point, but instead of bringing the nose up to the horizon, I just leave it right here, forward pressure on the yoke, keep the tail up until the airplane stops flying. Now let's look at that from the outside. Okay, now let's review. So you want a stabilized approach, pitch for airspeed, power for altitude, keeping that same picture for a glide slope all the way down to roundout. Here's an example of being too high for roundout right at the end of the runway. And this is an example of being too low for rounding out right at the end of the runway. Here we are at the end of the runway at a flat attitude. We have our choice, 3-point or wheel land. For the 3-point, we ease back on the yoke, bring the nose up to the horizon, and let the airplane settle. For a wheel landing, we gently push forward. The wheels contact the runway, keep the tail up, and roll out till the tail stops flying and drops down on its own. Hope this little video clip has given you some good information and ideas. You can email me at montanabyair@yahoo.com. Phone is 406-949-5709.